Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Specifically, I have selected a monster to talk about. This is a Spelljammer monster. It's called the Focoid, of all things. It's literally three lenses, and that's when it's focusing its full power on something. But normally, it is just three spheres connected together. That's the monster that you encounter as you're traveling through space. It's a very strange thing to actually include in your game. I totally understand it. If you're like, Fred, we don't get it. That's all right. That's why I'm here to talk about the monster and give you the lowdown on this thing. It's actually very hard to find information on this particular creature just because it's just so out there, and it's an old monster. It's advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So the Focoid is a severe or extreme navigational hazard, like many things in wild space and the astral sea, but generally it's usually near a bright star or the brightest stars in wild space. It needs to be quite close for a number of different reasons, which I will explain. The Focoid manipulates their gelatinous bodies, and there are three, as I said, spheres into a lens or a series of lenses, and it focuses intense light onto an object that it can choose, and then it will essentially roast the enemy or ignite rigging on a Spelljammer ship or just burn the Spelljammer deck. And it's at will. It can do it all the time if it wants to. In fact, in many ports, you'll find that adventurers can receive a bounty. So you actually receive money of up to 500 gold pieces for every Focoid carcass you can bring in. That's how there's a bounty on these things. They need to be eliminated from the wild space realm. Focoids consist of, as I said, three very clear, transparent, gelatinous spheres, and they are joined into a short chain. All Focoids are so close to transparent that it is extremely difficult to see them unless they are moving against like a star field. If you've got something that helps sort of break them up a bit, you may be able to pick them out. But the chances are you'll never see them until it's too late. In which case, the refraction of the starlight, if they are moving past a star field, gives the observer a vague notion of where they are. So you won't even know exactly where they are. Their exact location's very hard to actually establish. A Focoid is especially difficult to see between the observer and a bright star, obviously, because you got the light from the bright star shining at you. Not surprising, that is where the Focoid favours positioning its attacks. That's where it wants to be, between you as the observer and a bright star, so that it can actually force extreme light in your direction, basically like a laser beam. There is a small mouth at one end of the Focoid, which is not really very good at doing much of anything other than eating things. Until the Focoid's last meal is completely digested, the food can be seen through the creature temporarily, rendering it visible. So if it's still digesting stuff, you might actually be able to pick it up. Each spherical action of the Focoid's body can be manipulated into various shapes, so not just a flat lens. In the Focoid's combat posture, the spheres actually flatten right down into extremely it's a bifocular lens that and with three different lenses connected, it strengthens the light. At other times, the body sections of the Focoid can be elongated if they want to do so. They can be squashed or left as just spheres, so it can change that. These shape variations may indicate some kind of communication too. There's a theory that the way that the Focoid actually shapes its different spheres is actually a communication style or method between other Focoids. Or it might even indicate a change in the mood of your Focoid. So what does this thing do in combat? How does it kind of operate? A Focoid's mouth is completely unsuitable for combat, so you would not use the mouth of a Focoid to actually attack. The creature's only means of attack is by focusing light through its lens-shaped body, and that's how it actually does, it injures and kills things. Obviously, a focoid must have a bright source of light in order to attack, which means they tend to hang out near something that produces a lot of light. The focoid is therefore seldom found away from any kind of fiery body. If you were to find a focoid that isn't near a star or an exploding gas cloud, then that would be quite unusual. On rare occasions, the focoid does travel in deep space, and in this case, I suppose you can now consider it, whether that's wild space or you consider it the astral sea, possibly. It cannot attack, and therefore must only, well, it usually goes unnoticed. You probably wouldn't be able to see it in the astral sea because there just isn't enough starlight being produced to actually have it show up. Each of the focoid's 3 body sections can become a lens, and they can fire at separate targets. So you can actually use each lens, which potentially means it could fire at 3 different targets since there are 3 body sections to it. Each section of the focoid can fire per round. Now, neither a focoid nor the focused beam of light it fires is easily seen. So even the light that it produces, that it fires at you, it's invisible. It's not like Star Wars or Star Trek where you see this energy beam blasting towards you. A typical encounter with the focoid opens as the creatures attack, usually in the 1 or more rounds, while the confused target sort of wonders why they are catching on fire or taking damage and attempts to get a handle on its position, or figure out what the heck is going on. You might find this is the sort of thing where you wind up getting a mysterious attack on you and you don't actually know where it's coming from. All missile attacks against a focoid struggle to connect. So that means if you're using a ballista, a big huge rock, or arrows, bolts, it doesn't matter, any kind of, even magic, it's going to be difficult to connect with the focoid. Melee attacks are not effective. Unfortunately, it's one of the worst things you can have is a monster that isn't affected by something. So if you use a close quarter melee attack, they're not affected, okay? Since a focoid is relatively easy to see up close, that seems strange, doesn't it? But you can still, up close they're easy to see, but you're still not going to be able to do very much to it. That's very unfortunate. A focoid can use its light focusing weapon only when it's between a star and the target. So if you move out of position, so you're not in the right position to be targeted, then that actually changes everything because it's no longer able to do any kind of attack against you, and its mouth is not a viable tool. If the focoid is maneuvered out of position, it just simply can't fire. The focoid then usually elevates evaluates that situation, moving off if it can, particularly if the odds are against it. It's the sort of creature that will actually retreat, and it will press the attack if it thinks it will get a meal. If it doesn't think it can get a meal out of this attack, then it won't pursue it. In either case, the focoid out of position is not firing and therefore impossible to locate visually. So it is a real hassle for a dungeon master to present this and not feel like you're a bit of a heel. Why am I talking about this monster? You must be thinking. Well, there's always a rationale behind everything that I do, and we're getting there. The habitat or society of your focoid. Focoids are creatures of space. They live and breathe and they die here. Like that's how they operate. They don't live anywhere else. The focoids are never encountered in groups. You will only ever find 1, possibly 2. If you're very lucky and they're actually in the production process of reproducing, you might find 3 at the most. Focoids have apparently not discovered the advantages of coordinated hunting or attacks. Like they don't sort of join together in packs. The focoid attack, they only do so to gain food. They're not malicious in any way. They don't have any animosity towards anybody. They're only, or any particular race, all they want is to eat. However, most other spacefaring races and creatures have tremendous animosity towards the Focoid just because of how difficult they are to deal with. And just because they're just a huge menace when navigating, because trying to actually find them and eliminate them is so difficult. The ecology of the Focoid is a little odd. A Focoid is unisexual, and they reproduce, usually requires the union of up to 3 adults. You have to have 3 adults for it to work. Each Focoid grows a new gelatinous sphere, so instead of having just 3, they wind up with 4. And when the 3 combined, they join and create a new individual Focoid, and those additional spheres that they create on their body become the new Focoid. And then they separate. So once that new Focoid is born, all participating Focoids disperse, and then you have a new Focoid. So it's a very unusual reproduction method. You're probably wondering, like, did this actually evolve, or was it created by wizards? We do not know. And Focoid have to eat meat to actually get nutrition. Like they can't eat vegetables or anything like that. They can't go on a low diet Jenny Craig program. It wouldn't work for them. So yes, they are a carnivorous creature. So how do you defeat a Focoid? My advice to you is stay away from heat, light, fire, burning gas, and big bright stars. Like, that's probably the best way to deal with them, particularly when you're confronted with why are we getting hurt or catching on fire and we can't see where it's coming from? It's probably a Focoid. Now, how do you incorporate a Focoid into your adventure? This is going to be a good one. The Focoid is a really difficult monster to include into any adventure unless, a Spelljammer ship gets very close to a burning star. And so what I'm going to say to you is, this is one monster you may well, it probably would be very sensible never to include it in your game. Have I just made a video on warning you about a monster you should never use? I feel like I might have done that. So the publication history of this thing, you'll find it in the Monstrous Compendium. That's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons for Spelljammer. It's got it in the appendix, basically. It's one of those things that got created. I don't know where they got this from. Did they get it from Star Trek? No, they certainly didn't get it from Star Wars. They had to get it from somewhere, because usually these things are created from existing IP and other properties. But it is a bizarre creature, and it's certainly one that I recommend you just don't use. Now, I'm hoping this was useful to you in some way. I don't know that it necessarily was. I always still find the Focoid a hilarious and very entertaining and very sort of sobering creature. Like, it's a very interesting how it operates. So it's very tempting to want to use it. I would very much like to know, would you use this in your game? Would you not? Have you already used it before? Or are you just completely confused as to why I even did this in the first place? It's all right. I would like to thank my patrons and everybody who's been watching my live streams and my videos. Thank you very much. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.